Hello, I'm Bud McCord. I'm here in Brazil, South America. It's September 23rd, 2021. We're walking through the pages of John's Gospel, carefully reading everything about what Jesus did to disciple his first disciples. And we're in the story of John chapter 9. The entire chapter is about a man who was born blind. And I said yesterday, and I go back to this thought repeatedly, that nothing that Jesus said or did was accidental, and every single thing about his life had a very deep purpose to it. And there's so much in this story that points to that fact. So he comes across this man who was born blind. And I believe that this man actually represents the state of the religious leaders in the nation of Israel, that they insist that they can see, but in reality, they cannot see what they need to see. They need to have this revealed to them. They need to have their eyes opened like this man's eyes were opened. And this point of pride on their part is keeping them from being able to embrace the fact that Jesus Christ is in fact the revelation of the very heart of God. So we pick the story up again in verse 13. This man is asked if he is, in fact, the man who was born blind. He says, yes, it's me. And then the people who are interrogating him, they ask him, well, where is this person who healed you? And he said, I don't know. So that the man has had an encounter with Jesus, which has forever changed his life. This man is now intertwined into the narrative of Jesus' life. He is already changed at the most fundamental level of his life experience, because now he was blind, but he can now see. So his life has intersected with the life of the Messiah. The benefit of that to him is he is now able to see. But he has now been thrust into a theological debate by people who insist that this man see what they see, and rather than see Jesus. And this is the debate that has gone on ever since Jesus came into the world. So in verse 13, we begin to read this. It says, they brought him who formerly was blind to the Pharisees. Now it was a Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. This is why I'm telling you, it is not accidental. Jesus did this on the Sabbath, and this would get the firm and complete condemnation of the religious leaders, because they did not understand and they could not conceive that good could be done on the Sabbath, even if it looked like works, which were not supposed to be done on the Sabbath. Then the Pharisees also asked him again how he had received his sight. And he said to them, he put clay on my eyes, and I wash, and I see. Now this is indisputable testimony of a man who has said that he came into the presence, or Jesus came into his life, and he touched him. He touched him with the symbol of what man was created by, the dust of the earth, like Adam was created. And then he said, I washed and I see. In other words, my cooperation with Jesus has allowed me to see. Therefore, some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, talking about Jesus, because he does not keep the Sabbath. Now they want to cancel Jesus. Cancel culture has been around for a long time. They want to cancel Jesus. Now others said, how can a man who is a sinner do such signs? So wait a minute. He does so many great and wonderful things. They don't understand how that could be true, that he could help. And there was a division among them. They said to the blind man again, what do you say about him because he opened your eyes? He said, he is a prophet. Now, this man has already entered into this relationship with Jesus. This man will never open his eyes ever again without thinking of Jesus. This man has had an experience where the hands of God have touched him, and he has cooperated, and his eyes were open. This man would never awaken on any day and open his eyes without remembering Jesus. So he says he is a prophet. He is someone sent from God. He is someone who has authority over people because he is speaking for God. He's acting for God. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him who had received his sight. And they asked him, saying, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" This is kind of debate and manufactured accusations. Sound familiar about what we live in right now in our own times? His parents answered and said to them, "We know that this is our son, that he was born blind. But what means he now sees, we do not know, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. He is of age. Ask him. He will speak for himself." And boy, is that ever true. This guy is an eyewitness, literally. He is an eyewitness of the power of Jesus Christ. He will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews. The Jews here are the religious authorities. For the religious authorities, the Jews had agreed already that if anyone confessed that he was Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." To be put out of the synagogue in that particular culture would be an excommunication. It would mean that if you ran a business in the city, you would be shunned. It would mean that if you had an opinion about anything, no one would listen to you. It would literally be a social system of keeping you totally aligned with the public narrative that the main leaders wanted. These are the same things we live with today. Things have not changed. So they again called the man who was blind and said to him, "Give God the glory. We know that this man is a sinner." Now here they want to contrast this. They want this man to give God the glory and completely remove Jesus from the story. He answered and said, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see." There's something about a true conversion experience or a true connection to the person of Jesus. It produces an effect on us in such a way that we may be simple, we may be untrained, we may not be the wisest people in the world, but we know what happened to us. And for somebody to come along and say, no, he did not really do that. Give God the glory. And you say, yeah, but God used this man. I can't separate what happened to me from this purpose. So this man says, "I was blind, now I see." This is all Jesus wants from the Pharisees and the scribes and the religious leaders. He wants them to confess that none of them has seen the reality from above. None of them have seen the reality of God's love from the kingdom of God in action. They have lived in the darkness of this world, and by the revelation of the scriptures, they had been told what they could and could not do and how they could behave so that they could reap the benefits of living a righteous life. But they had translated that into, we already see. We're not blind. We don't need what this blind man got, whatever he got. And so they're arguing out of the dark. And what they need to do as they're in the presence of the Messiah is to humble themselves and say, "You have shown us signs in significant amount and number and repetitions that we know that the good that you're doing is coming from above. And so these works that you're doing and everything, we don't know how to translate it. We don't know how, because we don't understand it. We're blind." This is where Jesus wants to get these people. But they will not admit that they're blind. If you've ever experienced a very deep political debate or an argument even in a church meeting, you've ever been in a place where people are seeing two entirely different things, and you know the kind of stress that can produce, and the desire of some people to win the argument at all costs. That's what you're seeing here right now. But Jesus is the reality of the universe. And so they're arguing against facts that cannot change. They're arguing against Jesus Christ, who was before Abraham. And all they needed to do was to admit that they had never seen the kingdom of God in action. But in seeing Jesus, they were getting a manifestation of the kingdom of God. This poor blind man who was born from birth, he was born for this moment. He was born to have an encounter with the power of the Messiah, of God made flesh among us. And he was experiencing that. He experienced it. And his theology is developing. He said, I don't know who it is. But then he said, he's a prophet. He's of God. This infuriated the leaders. And so they began to try to cancel him, get rid of him, or at least change the narrative. This is what people do who want the world to stay as it is. We defend it. But if you've ever had an experience personally with Jesus, then Jesus becomes permanently connected to your narrative, and no one can take that away from you. That's what it means to be born again. Have you had a personal experience with Jesus where he opened your eyes to see him and see who he is and hear his voice? Have you had that personal experience? If you have, don't ever deny it and don't pretend it didn't happen. Be like this man and just say, I was blind, but now I see. That's a conversion. That's the true beginning of discipleship. It's not all the same for all of us, but we have had a personal connection to Jesus that has changed us. And when we're born again, we know that. Have a great day. Think on these things. They're worth thinking about.